Sorry, let me just go right ahead. Dr. Hepzibah Egede is a dual qualified lawyer and the LLB program director at the Cardiff Metropolitan University. Prior to joining the academia, she practiced as a commercial lawyer in Nigeria, and she also worked at Mobile, Nigeria. Before her present position, she worked as a senior lecturer in law at the University of Buckingham and as co-director of the University of Buckingham Center for Extractive Energy Studies. Hepzibah worked as a co-investigator with the RG Lead Principal Investigator on Law and Your Environment, a project funded by the UK Environmental Law Association, UKELA. Hepzibah also researches in reproductive healthcare rights and gender equality. She has published work on shrouded gender and reproductive issues in child welfare and protection proceedings. She is married to Edwin Egede, Professor of International Law at the Cardiff University, UK. Dr. Egede, we're happy to have you on the platform. We're ready to listen to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Emma. Can everyone hear me clearly? Can we hear clearly? Thank you very much. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. I want to first thank Pastor Poju Oyemade, the lead pastor of the TCN, and also the wonderful and amazing team of HR professionals who have organized this program. It's awesome and it's fantastic, and I'm very grateful to make this presentation. So what I'm going to do right now is to share my screen. Just bear with me. Super. And if you can see my screen, just give me a heads up that you can see that. Thank you very much. Okay. So I think that's okay. So what we're going to be looking at today is health and well-being in the workplace. What are the legal implications for HR professionals? And I love using full terminology. And so probably I'll just say human resource managers or human resource professionals. So health and well-being in the workplace, legal implications for HR professionals. So the first thing we're going to do is to just have a quick overview. I want to talk about employers and organizational types. I'll probably provide a definition of health and well-being, quickly look through some ethical and value systems, talk about the duties of employers, and that's so important for the HR managers, look at legal implications concerning the COVID pandemic, what are the steps to take, and then just give you some final thoughts. What I've done here, and I hope you can see it, I've put up some interesting animal types, and I just want you to sort of go along with me and sort of try and work out what type of HR professional you are, what is your organizational type, and also maybe looking at your employer type. So we've got the giraffe here, and one of the key features of the giraffe is its neck. So that shows that the giraffe basically sees quite a bit. It has a very wide vision. It sees probably further than many other types of animals. And if we want to survive in terms of things, in terms of managing our employees, especially in this current environment we are, in terms of the new normal, HR professionals, employers, and also organizations need to be very visionary and also very foresighted. So you really need to think about lots of things in terms of futuring. In the middle of the slide is a dinosaur, and a dinosaur is not an animal we see any longer. It's been consigned to the history books. And I would hope that basically that there's no employer or organization or HR professional that thinks in a dinosaur manner, especially with regard to employee well-being. Then I have up there a cat. And interestingly, the cat is lying on a flower bed. And the interesting thing about cats is that they're very self-absorbed, indolent, and most of the time for the cat is all about me. And if we're HR professionals or employers or organizations that just think about the me factor, then probably employee well-being may not be at the top of our list in terms of things for the business priorities. And then the last animal type I have there are the dolphins, and I love dolphins. Dolphins are probably the most intelligent mammals, and apart from human beings, of course, and they're team players, innovative and very intelligent. And so I want you to sort of think very carefully what type of HR professional you are, what type of organization that you're in. Definitely, we don't want to be dinosaurs. So that takes us to the next thing we want to look at today. And what I'll just do is to go into our next slide. And I just want to define what is health. What is health and well-being? And a quick definition has been provided by the WHO Constitution, so the World Health Organization. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. And health is not just merely an absence of disease or infirmity. And this is very important for us as HR professionals. And two key questions are put up. Yesterday, we were talking quite a bit on business, and that is so important. But maybe I just want to ask the class and the learning room a question. Which one do you think is more important, health or wealth? They're probably both very important. But honestly, the COVID pandemic has shown us that if you don't have health, there's a likelihood that you can't make wealth or you can't operate efficiently as a business. So health is very fundamental. Our employees' well-being are quite critical to the performance of our business. And then again, if you look at the WHO definition, there's some missing elements, and maybe you can sort of interact with me in terms of a chat handle to probably identify some of the missing elements. The key missing elements there, the WHO definition talks about physical, mental, and social well-being. And so one key element that is not in that definition is spiritual well-being and also economic well-being. And it's very interesting that lots of the Fortune 500 companies are thinking quite a bit right now about spiritual well-being. And that has been imbibed in their ethical and value systems. So when you look at employees' well-being, you find out that companies like Amazon, Intel, Google, for example, are incorporating aspects of spiritual well-being. But I suppose the question is, what type of spiritual well-being? So lots of them right now are focusing on things like Zen, mindfulness, which obviously are probably not things that we want to think about. But values and ethical systems are very important when we think of employee well-being. Which takes us to the shalom concept. We've seen that health is not just the absence of disease. Health is not just the absence of infirmity. When we talk about health, we're talking about the totality of human well-being. And that's what shalom means. Shalom is actually a Hebrew word some people think it's just narrowed down to peace, but the root word for shalom is wholeness or completeness or well-being, which is exemplified in 3 John 2, which says, "Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy It says, "Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well." So that totality of well-being. I put up a very interesting reflection here from Forbes. I found it really fascinating, especially the 3rd bullet point, which talks about the fact that employee wellness and employee performance are linked. So as HR professionals, we need to think very carefully that a culture of well-being, a culture of employee well-being would actually drive results and help to create an engaged workforce. And what that does is to enhance productivity and also enhance profitability for the business or organization. So please don't put off employee well-being. Don't think you need to be a multinational company before you start thinking about employee well-being. So let's get to the legal framework right now. I'm based in the United Kingdom, so I'm going to do a bit of a comparative analogy. And so what are the key laws that deal with health and well-being? In the United Kingdom, the major law is the Health and Safety at Work Act of 1974. And it provides a binding employer duty on employers to protect the health, safety, and welfare of all their employees and any other people who might be affected by their business. So that includes contractors as well. And there's a duty for employers to do whatever is reasonably practicable to achieve this. And this would mean minimizing risk and also protecting workers from things that may cause harm in the workplace. And there are other legislation that form the framework for health and employee well-being in the United Kingdom. And I find in particular very interesting the act, the protection from harassment. Because if we operate a very toxic environment, you may end up sort of damaging or hurting employee well-being. So as HR professionals, we need to think very carefully about what our workplace policies are like in terms of maybe bullying, harassment. It's really very important when we talk about enhancing employee well-being. Lots of times people always say that Nigeria and other developing countries don't have very strong laws on health and safety. I was supervising a thesis, I think sometime last year or 2 years ago, and my supervisee was looking at occupational health and safety in the Nigerian oil and gas sector. And so there was quite a bit of a debate on whether the Nigerian occupational health and safety framework is fit for purpose. But we'll see that Nigeria has quite a few laws that deal with health and safety and employee well-being. So you have the Labor Act of 2004 that requires employers to provide a safe environment for employees to work in. You have the Factories Act of 1987 again, that provides a similar on employers to protect health, safety, and welfare of their employees in the factory. We're talking about industrial occupational health and safety. And then we also have the national policy. And if you look at paragraph 5.3, there's a broad duty to ensure that as far as is reasonably practicable, the safety and health and welfare of all workers should be protected. And this is also emphasized in case law. And I just want to point us to the leading case of Iyere and Bendel Feed and Flowers Mills Limited, which emphasizes that employers have a duty take reasonable care not to expose employees to unnecessary risk. So this shows very clearly that developing countries like Nigeria have a suitable legal framework, a legislative framework with regard to patient health and safety, as well as employee well. Because the key question will be the extent of how these laws are enforced. But please don't think like an HR professional, like some HR professionals, that there's no legislative framework that deals with this. There is. And if there's a breach of the legislative framework, of course, there will be sanctions. So we move on, just sort of looking at what is the state of your work environment, or what does the work system look like in your organ? And again, that takes us back again to the whole notion of values and ethics. If your values and ethics are not quite right, then of course it would create a very toxic environment that could cause significant harm to employees and their well-being. But let's go back again to the legal framework, both in terms of common law, which is law created by the courts, and also the legislative framework. The key concern is foreseeability of harm. So is there reasonable foreseeability that the type of work system or the type of work environment could trigger harm to an employee? So that is what lawyers in organizations and HR professionals would need to think about. And so once that there could be foreseeability of harm or reasonable foreseeability of harm, what the courts will be concerned with is whether the employer has done enough to minimize that workplace harm. And the law is not concerned with eliminating all risk. What the law is concerned with is that you take the reasonable measures. And I'll put up two cases here, Barber and Walker. Barber talks about a very overstressed head teacher who broke down and had depression. And the Supreme Court held that his workplace had not done enough to minimize the harm that was obviously foreseeable. So we need to really think very carefully about whether we have a toxic environment. So quickly, because I know that I am pressed for time, what are the steps to take in terms of encouraging or enhancing employee well-being? And I've just put up a few steps there. The first thing we should think about is, who is the competent person in the organization to deal with employee well-being and health and safety? Do you have a proper workplace policy in place? And this is not really too difficult in the 21st century to get a template to deal with that. Have you taken the necessary assessment in terms of the risks that are potentially there in your workplace? Have you encouraged and consulted with your employees in terms of how they can protect themselves also in the workplace, because it's a joint responsibility? And information and training is very important. Have you provided the necessary workplace facilities and personal protective equipment? Do you have insurance in place? And have you displayed the health and safety law poster? These are just givens in countries like the United Kingdom. It's binding law. And we need to think about the jurisdiction we're in, if it's just good practice, but we should take these necessary steps. And it's quite critical right now in terms of making the workplace COVID secure. And some of the measures we'll need to take would be minimizing health risks, putting in place the necessary personal protective equipment, making sure that your employees basically observe social distancing, the necessary hygiene measures. And really, it doesn't matter if you're an SME or a large company. there's still that legal responsibility to ensure disease prevention and control in the workplace. So let me leave you with this last thought, because I know we're very pressed for time. These are thoughts I have sort of been collating together during this COVID pandemic outbreak. The world today is so interconnected. So something may happen in another part of the world that affects basically what we're doing in other parts of the world. And that is so important in terms of multinational companies. So if you're an HR professional in a multinational company, maybe you have subsidiaries in developing countries, you need to think very carefully. What are you doing about your employees' well-being, especially in this age of the social media and also the power of the internet? And honestly, people drive and propel businesses, and how organizations take care of their employees are very critical when we're dealing with word-of-mouth marketing. It's really very important. So employees' well-being matters. It's key to the profitability and productivity of your organization. And I just want to end with this last word. A lot of us talk a lot about the millennial generation, and probably some of us belong to the millennial generation. But the truth of the matter is that you have the Generation Z, and that's the generation that was born between 1995 and 2015, and they're coming into the workplace right now. And they have very strong ethical values of what should take place in the workplace, especially with regard to employee well-being. And in this culture of the Me Too movement, in the culture of Black Lives Matters, every HR professional needs to think of employee well-being: physical, social, mental, economic, and as well as emotional and spiritual well-being. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to present, and I'll welcome any questions that I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Egede. That was an amazing presentation. Unfortunately, time has gone now, so we can't ask any questions. But I'd just like to let you know about some of the comments that have been coming in. Toya C. Afolayan says that your approach was absolutely lovely. And then Philip Amiola says that this was a very interesting presentation. So what we're going to do is to collate all the questions that have come in, and then we'll send them to you for you to answer them. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you very
for coming. It was wonderful to have you on board, and we hope to have you again next time.